The harsh winds of Talos howled across the barren landing zone, whipping sand and dust into miniature cyclones that danced between abandoned structures. The heat was oppressive, even through Rivendax's climate-controlled suit as he stepped off the ramp of his small transport vessel. Just another day in paradise, he muttered to himself, scanning the desolate landscape through tinted goggles. The mining settlement had been abandoned for at least a decade, maybe more. Crumbling extraction towers loomed in the distance, their skeletal frames cutting dark silhouettes against the orange-tinted sky. Riven checked his wrist console, confirming coordinates for the third time. This was definitely the place, the very edge of chartered space, a forgotten dust ball that nobody in their right mind would visit voluntarily. But the payment for this assignment was substantial enough to silence his complaints. Mostly, gather environmental data, assess structural integrity, mark for potential reclamation. He recited his orders aloud, voice drowned by another howl of wind. Last job, then I'm done with corporate errands. As Riven adjusted the scanner on his belt, movement caught his eye, a flicker of something pale against the rust-colored terrain. He tensed, hand instinctively moving to the blaster holstered at his hip. "Who's there?" he called out, voice amplified by his suit's external speaker. "Show yourself." A figure emerged from behind a collapsed storage container, walking with determined strides despite the swirling sand. Riven's breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, but unlike any he'd seen in this quadrant. Her silver-white hair whipped wildly around her face, revealing elongated ears that tapered to delicate points. Her skin bore faint, luminescent markings, subtle enough to miss at a distance, but unmistakable up close. She wore practical desert gear, patched in multiple places with various tech components affixed to her belt. Celia? The name escaped his lips before he could stop himself. Her amber eyes narrowed, studying him with exhausted intensity. "So you do remember me, Dax." Recognition flooded his mind. A research facility in flames. Alarms blaring. The weight of her unconscious body in his arms as he sprinted through collapsing corridors. A mission from 5 years ago, a rescue operation that had earned him a substantial bonus and a promotion. He began, but stopped when he noticed she wasn't alone. A small figure emerged from behind her legs. A child, no more than 7 or 8 years old. The boy had the same pointed ears and faint markings as Celia, but his eyes were a striking blue that seemed almost luminous against his dusty face. He gazed up at Riven with unabashed curiosity. "Is that him, Mom?" the boy whispered loudly, tugging at Celia's sleeve. She placed a protective hand on the child's shoulder. "Yes, Kale, that's him." Riven shifted uncomfortably, looking between them. "What are you doing here, Celia?" "This place is scheduled for corporate reclamation. It's not safe for civilians, especially not a... I know exactly what syndicate is planning for this place." She cut him off, her voice sharp. "Just like I know your presence here isn't coincidental." She stepped forward abruptly, guiding the child in front of her. "Kale, meet Rivendax," she said, her tone softening slightly as she addressed her son. Then, without warning, she gently pushed the boy toward Riven. Instinctively, Riven reached out to stop the child from stumbling, finding himself awkwardly holding the boy's shoulders. Kale stared up at him with wide, curious eyes, not a trace of fear visible on his small face. "You saved me years ago," Celia said, her voice carrying a complex mixture of gratitude and accusation, "and left me with this." Riven's mind raced to process her words, looking between the woman he'd rescued and the child who now stood before him. "Wait, you're not suggesting that he's..." A high-pitched whine cut through the air, interrupting his stammered response. All three looked up as a sleek black drone circled overhead, its scanning beams sweeping the landing area. "Syndicate," Celia hissed, pulling Kale back to her side. The drone dipped lower, its sensors clearly focusing on their position. Suddenly, Kale raised his small hand, his eyes narrowing in concentration. The luminescent markings on his skin brightened perceptibly, and the drone's flight pattern immediately became erratic. It spun wildly, its lights flickering, before shooting off in a random direction and crashing into an abandoned structure several hundred meters away. Riven stared at the boy, then at the smoking drone wreckage in the distance. Did he just— "We need to move," Celia interrupted, already gathering what appeared to be a small pack. "That drone transmitted our position before it went down. They'll send more armed ones this time." "They're after you?" Riven asked, still trying to understand what was happening. "They're after him," she replied, nodding toward Kale, who was now examining Riven's equipment with unabashed interest. "And they sent you here to prepare the way." "I don't know what you're talking about," Riven protested. "I'm just here to survey the area before a full syndicate team arrives," Celia finished for him. "I know, but do you have any idea why they're so interested in this worthless rock?" She didn't wait for an answer. "The same reason they're hunting us. This place holds secrets from the old laboratories, secrets connected to what they did to me. To us." Riven's communication device beeped urgently. Multiple signals approaching from the atmosphere. "We can discuss this later," he decided, looking at the frightened but determined woman and the oddly calm child. Whatever was happening, he couldn't just leave them to face syndicate forces alone. "My ship is prepped for departure. We need to go. Now." Celia nodded, relief briefly crossing her features before her hardened expression returned. "Lead the way, Dax. Just like old times." Only nothing about this felt like old times to Riven as he sprinted back toward his ship with an unfamiliar child and the woman he'd once rescued trailing close behind. Particularly not the strange feeling that somehow, in ways he couldn't yet understand, the boy called Kale was connected to him. The whine of approaching drones grew louder behind them. The interior of Riven's transport vessel wasn't designed for passengers. It was utilitarian at best, with minimal comforts and maximum functionality, precisely what a solo contractor needed for quick planetary surveys. "Strap in wherever you can," Riven instructed as they clambered aboard. He sealed the entry hatch and moved swiftly to the cockpit, fingers dancing across the control panel to initiate the launch sequence. "It's going to be a rough takeoff." Celia guided Kale to the small bench against the bulkhead, securing makeshift restraints around them both. The boy's eyes darted everywhere, absorbing every detail of the ship's interior with fascination rather than fear. "What does this button do?" Kale asked, pointing to a flashing red light near his seat. "Don't touch anything," Riven and Celia said in perfect unison, then exchanged an awkward glance. The engines roared to life, the entire vessel shuddering as Riven punched the acceleration hard enough to break atmosphere in record time. Through the view screen, they could see 3 Syndicate Scout ships entering the upper atmosphere just as they cleared the planet's gravity well. "They're going to track us," Celia said, her voice tense. "Standard Syndicate vessels have pursuit capabilities that outmatch a civilian transport." Riven shot her a sidelong glance. "Good thing this isn't exactly a civilian transport, then." He flipped a series of switches overhead, and hidden compartments throughout the ship's hull slid open, revealing modified thrusters and scrambling equipment. Contractor perks. "Hold on." The ship lurched as Riven engaged the auxiliary systems, rapidly changing course and deploying a cloud of electromagnetic particles that would temporarily confuse their pursuer sensors. It wouldn't buy them much time, but it might be enough to reach the asteroid belt that circled the system's outer rim. "Is this your spaceship?" Kale asked, his voice bright with excitement despite their dire situation. "It's a rental," Riven replied automatically, then wondered why he was bothering to explain anything to a child he'd just met. A child who, if Celia's implication was correct. No, that was impossible. He pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on navigating through the increasingly dense field of asteroids ahead. "We need somewhere to hide, to regroup," he said over his shoulder. "Any suggestions? You seem to know this system better than I do." Celia hesitated. "There's an abandoned research outpost embedded in one of the larger asteroids. X-42. It was part of the original expedition before Syndicate took over operations on Talos 4. X-42 it is," Riven confirmed, adjusting their course. The ship weaved between massive rocks, its modified sensors scanning for the structure Celia described. Behind them, The first of the Syndicate vessels emerged from the particle cloud. Riven cursed under his breath, pushing the engines harder. The outpost appeared on his scanner, nestled deep within a crater on a spinning asteroid roughly 10 kilometers in diameter. There, he pointed to a barely visible docking bay carved into the rock. We're going in hot. Brace yourselves. The landing was more of a controlled crash, the ship's landing struts groaning in protest as Riven cut power at the last possible moment. They came to rest inside a cavernous hangar, long abandoned but still maintaining minimal atmospheric integrity. Everyone alive back there? Riven called out, running a quick system check to ensure the ship hadn't sustained critical damage. We're fine, Celia replied, already helping Kale out of the restraints. But we need to move deeper inside. This place still has emergency power reserves, enough to mask our presence if we can reach the central control hub. Riven nodded, grabbing his emergency pack and blaster. Lead the way. As they exited the ship, Kale suddenly broke free from Celia's grasp and ran ahead, stopping at the hangar's massive viewport. Beyond the reinforced glass, the asteroid field stretched out like a glittering ocean of rock and ice, backlit by the system's distant sun. Wow, the boy exclaimed, pressing his small hands against the cold surface. It's beautiful. Celia quickly caught up to him, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. Don't wander off like that. But Mom, look, the rocks are dancing. Riven joined them at the viewport, scanning the asteroid field with narrowed eyes. The Syndicate ships were out there, searching. It wouldn't be long before they thought to check the abandoned outposts. Kid's got a strange definition of beauty, he muttered, then caught Celia's sharp look. What? Most people see deadly space rocks. He sees a cosmic dance. Just making an observation. He sees connections most people miss, she said quietly. It's part of what makes him special, and why they want him. Riven studied the boy's profile, searching for any resemblance to himself, and finding none he could immediately identify. The pointed ears, the faint markings, those were clearly inherited from Celia or whatever procedure Syndicate had performed on her. About what you said back there, he began awkwardly. That he's. We should keep moving, Celia interrupted, guiding Kale away from the viewport. We can talk once we're secure. The trio made their way deeper into the research outpost, through corridors where emergency lighting still functioned at minimal capacity. The place had been abandoned in a hurry. Personal effects and research materials remained scattered across workstations, frozen in time. Kale moved with surprising confidence through the unfamiliar environment, sometimes turning corners before Celia could direct him. How does he know where to go? Riven whispered as they followed the boy down yet another correct corridor. He can sense active technology, Celia explained. He's leading us to where the power is strongest. Sure enough, Kale eventually led them to a central operations room, where several consoles still showed signs of life, their displays glowing faintly. Celia immediately went to work, her fingers expertly navigating the outdated interface. I can activate the outpost stealth protocols, she explained. It was designed to be hidden from casual scans, part of the original research parameters. While she worked, Kale wandered around the room, touching various pieces of equipment. To Riven's astonishment, systems seemed to power up or change configuration at the boy's touch. What exactly can he do? Riven asked, keeping his voice low. Interfacing, Celia replied without looking up from her work. Direct neural connection with technology. It's what they engineered me for. But in him, it manifested naturally, and much more powerfully. And by they, you mean Syndicate. She nodded, finally turning to face him. I was a research engineer for their Nexus seed project. We were developing biotechnology interfaces, ways to merge human consciousness with machine intelligence. I volunteered for the initial trials. Her hand unconsciously touched one of the luminescent markings on her neck. When I realized what they really planned to use the technology for, creating weaponized human-machine hybrids, I tried to leave. They reclassified me from researcher to research subject. Riven remembered the mission briefing from 5 years ago. A simple extraction. Get in, retrieve a valuable asset, get out. He'd never been told Celia's name or what made her valuable. Just another corporate job with an unusually high security clearance. After you rescued me, she continued, I discovered I was pregnant. The procedures they performed, the genetic modifications, they affected more than just me. She glanced at Kale, who was currently making a deactivated monitor flicker to life with just his touch. He was born with abilities I was only beginning to develop. Syndicate has been hunting us ever since. And they sent me here because this is where it all started. The original research that led to Nexus Seed began in this very outpost decades ago. There are data cores here containing the project's foundation work that Syndicate needs to complete their current phase. She met his eyes directly. Your mission wasn't just reconnaissance, Riven. You were sent to locate those data cores. Before Riven could respond, a proximity alarm blared through the chamber. Celia rushed back to the console. They found us, she said, her voice tight with tension. Multiple vessels entering the asteroid's orbit. Riven moved to the security monitor, watching as 3 Syndicate ships approached the hidden outpost. Your stealth protocols aren't working. They're not fully activated yet, she countered, fingers flying across the interface. I need more time. Time is something we don't have, Riven said, checking his blaster charge. We need a backup plan. Can I help? Kale asked, suddenly appearing at Celia's side. The boy's eyes were wide but determined, his small hands already reaching toward the console. Celia hesitated, then nodded. Focus on the security grid, like I showed you before. Try to accelerate the stealth protocols. Kale placed his palms flat against the interface. Immediately, the luminescent markings on his skin brightened, spreading up his arms like glowing circuitry. The console responded, screens flashing with information at speeds too rapid for Riven to follow. What is he doing? Riven asked, mesmerized by the display. He's communicating with the system directly, Celia explained, a mixture of pride and concern in her voice. Downloading and processing information faster than any conventional interface could manage. Kale's eyes had taken on the same luminescent quality as his markings. His pupils dilated as information flowed through him. Mom, he said, his voice strangely distant. There's something else here. Something hidden. Focus on the stealth protocols first, she urged gently. We need to hide. But it's important, the boy insisted. It's calling to me. Riven checked the monitor again. The Syndicate ships were deploying smaller craft, boarding vessels designed for forced entry. Whatever it is, it'll have to wait. We got company incoming. Suddenly, the lights throughout the chamber dimmed, then brightened to full power, stronger than they should have been capable of after decades of dormancy. Simultaneously, the proximity alarms fell silent. I did it, Kale announced proudly, removing his hands from the console. They can't see us now. I redirected the power and amplified the stealth field. Celia quickly verified his claim on the monitors. Sure enough, the Syndicate vessels appeared to be circling the asteroid in a search pattern, their sensors unable to penetrate the now-active stealth technology. That's impressive, Riven admitted, holstering his blaster. He glanced at the boy with newfound respect, then back to Celia. But it won't hold them off forever. They know we're in this asteroid field somewhere. It's only a matter of time before they start physical searches. Then we need to find another way out, Celia said, already accessing the outpost schematics. And we need to understand what Kale sensed. If there's something valuable hidden here, we can't let Syndicate find it. Kale tugged at Riven's sleeve, his earlier exuberance replaced with solemnity. Are you really my father? The question hit Riven like a physical blow. He looked to Celia for help, but she deliberately kept her attention on the console, leaving him to handle the boy's inquiry. I don't know, kid, he answered honestly, crouching down at Kale's level. Your mom and I, we met briefly a long time ago, under difficult circumstances. Mom says you carried her through fire, Kale said, his blue eyes unblinking. That you were brave. Riven cleared his throat uncomfortably. I was just doing my job. Did you know about me? No, Riven replied, suddenly certain of at least this much. I didn't know about you until today. Kale considered this, head tilted slightly in a gesture that reminded Riven unnervingly of his own mother. Would you have stayed if you knew? The question struck at something deep within Riven, a wound he thought long healed. His own father had been absent, a ship captain who visited rarely between long hauls through the outer systems. His mother had raised him alone on a series of space stations, always moving, always struggling. I don't know, he answered finally, but I'm here now. It wasn't much of an answer, but Kale seemed satisfied, nodding solemnly before turning his attention back to the console where Celia worked. Mom, I want to show you what I found, he said, placing his hand back on the interface. The screens immediately responded, displaying a three-dimensional map of the asteroid. A pulsing light indicated a location deep within the rock, far below their current position. What is that? Celia asked, studying the display. The heart, Kale replied simply. It's been waiting for someone like me to find it. Riven and Celia exchanged concerned looks over the boy's head. Is it part of the original research? Riven asked. The Nexus Seed project? No. Kale shook his head. It's older. Much older. Celia zoomed in on the indicated area. According to the outpost schematics, it wasn't part of the official structure. It appeared to be a natural cavity within the asteroid. Itself, one the original researchers either hadn't discovered or had deliberately sealed off. There's something else, Kale added, his young face unusually serious. I think it can help us escape. It feels powerful. A warning light flashed on the security monitor. One of the Syndicate vessels was moving into docking position despite the stealth field, its crew apparently unwilling to rely solely on their sensors. Looks like we're about to have visitors, Riven observed grimly. Decision time. Do we hide, fight, or see what the kid's mysterious heart is all about? Celia's expression hardened with resolve. We find the heart. If it's what I think it might be, an undiscovered power source from the original excavation, it could be our best chance. She turned to Kale. Can you lead us there? The boy nodded eagerly. It's calling to me. I can follow the signal. Then lead on, kid, Riven said, checking his blaster one last time. Just try not to get us lost in the process, okay? Kale grinned, an expression of such unexpected brightness that Riven felt something twist in his chest. Don't worry, Battle Uncle. I've got this. Battle Uncle? Riven repeated, raising an eyebrow at Celia, who merely shrugged, the hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It's better than some of the names he's come up with for others, she remarked, gathering her pack. We should hurry. They left the control center just as the outpost's external sensors detected the first Syndicate boarding craft, making contact with the docking bay. Their pursuit had begun in earnest. Led by Kale, the trio descended through rarely used maintenance passages that wound deeper into the asteroid's interior. The established sections of the research outpost gradually gave way to rougher tunnels, evidence of the original excavation work that had hollowed out portions of the massive rock. How much farther? Riven asked after nearly an hour of steady descent. The air was growing noticeably thinner, and the temperature had dropped enough that he could see his breath misting before him. Close, Kale replied, his small hand trailing along the rock wall as if reading something written there. The luminescent markings on his skin provided just enough light to navigate the increasingly narrow passages. Can you feel it? Riven was about to reply that he couldn't feel anything except the onset of claustrophobia when he noticed an odd vibration beneath his feet, a subtle thrumming that seemed to pulsate through the very rock itself. What is that? He whispered, instinctively lowering his voice. The heart. Kale answered simply, picking up his pace. It's waking up because we're near. The passage suddenly widened, opening into a vast cavern that took Riven's breath away. The ceiling soared at least 30 meters overhead, embedded with thousands of crystalline formations that cast a soft, blue-green glow throughout the space. The floor sloped downward toward the center, where a perfectly circular pool of what appeared to be liquid light gently pulsed in rhythm with the vibrations they had felt. What the hell is this place? Riven breathed, his voice echoing slightly in the immense chamber. Celia moved forward cautiously, her eyes wide with wonder. It's not in any of the research records I accessed. This must be what the original team found. The reason they established the outpost here in the first place. Kale had already started down the slope toward the glowing pool, drawn as if by an invisible force. Celia quickly caught up to him, placing a restraining hand on his shoulder. "Wait," she cautioned. "We don't know what it is." "It's alive," Kale said with absolute certainty. "And it knows me." Before either adult could respond, a mechanical whirring sound echoed from a dark recess at the far side of the cavern. All three tensed, Riven drawing his blaster and stepping protectively in front of Celia and Kale. A figure emerged from the shadows, not a syndicate soldier as they had feared, but a robot. It was humanoid in basic design, but clearly ancient, its metal body covered in a patina that spoke of decades, perhaps centuries of inactivity. Despite its age, the robot moved with surprising grace, its optical sensors focusing on each of them in turn. "Greetings, visitors," it announced in a surprisingly melodious voice. "I am Maintenance and Knowledge Unit 7, designated 7 Malawian Kwaches. This facility has registered no human presence for 47 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Your arrival activates restoration protocols." Riven kept his blaster trained on the robot. "What is this place?" MK7's head tilted in a remarkably human gesture of consideration. "This chamber contains the bioelectronic nexus core, what you referred to as the heart. It is the source of all research conducted at this outpost, and the reason for the facility's existence." "A bioelectronic nexus?" Celia repeated, her scientific curiosity clearly piqued despite their dangerous situation. "You mean it's both organic and technological?" "Correct," 7 Malawian Kwaches confirmed. "The core represents a perfect symbiosis between living neural tissue and advanced computational systems. It was discovered during initial asteroid mining operations and has been studied continuously until the facility's abandonment." The robot's sensors suddenly focused intently on Kale. "Fascinating. The young one bears interface markers similar to the core structure. A design compatibility." Celia instinctively pulled Kale closer to her side. "He was born this way. Highly improbable without deliberate engineering," 7 Malawian Kwaches observed. "The core's signature is unique in all recorded Cosmos surveys." Riven finally lowered his blaster, though he kept it ready. "Look, we've got syndicate forces closing in on us. Is there another way out of this asteroid? An emergency escape system? Or something?" 7 Malawian Kwaches considered this. The research team maintained a secondary exit point for extreme contingencies. It connects to a small hangar housing 2 emergency evacuation vessels. "Are they still operational?" Celia asked urgently. "Power systems were maintained in standby mode according to protocols," 7 Malawian Kwaches replied. "However, launch capabilities require authorization from the core itself." All three looked toward the glowing pool at the center of the chamber. "You mean that thing controls whether we can leave or not?" Riven asked incredulously. "The core is not a thing," 7 Malawian Kwaches corrected, sounding almost offended. "It is a sentient entity with decision-making capabilities. It determines who may utilize outpost resources based on compatibility and intent assessment." "And how exactly do we get this assessment?" Riven demanded, frustration evident in his voice. Before 7 Malawian Kwaches could answer, Kale broke free from Celia's grasp and ran toward the glowing pool. Both adults called out in alarm, but the boy had already reached the edge of the liquid light. "Kale!" Celia cried, rushing after him. The boy turned, his face illuminated by the pool's radiance. "It's okay, Mom. It's talking to me." He knelt at the edge of the pool and, before either adult could stop him, plunged his hands into the luminescent substance. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entire chamber pulsed with intensified light, the crystalline formations in the ceiling responding in a cascade of color. Kale's body tensed, his back arching slightly as the markings on his skin flared brilliantly, creating complex patterns that mirrored the flow of the pool itself. "Neural interface established," 7 Malawian Kwaches announced calmly, as if this were a routine occurrence. "Core assessment in progress." "Get him out of there," Riven shouted, moving to pull Kale back, but Celia blocked his path. "Wait," she said, her voice tense but controlled. "Look at him. He's not in distress. This might be our only chance." Indeed, Kale's expression showed no pain, only intense concentration mixed with wonder. His eyes had taken on the same luminous quality as the pool, reflecting patterns of data that flowed too quickly for human perception. "Mom, Riven," he called out, his voice oddly resonant, layered with harmonics that hadn't been present before. "It's showing me everything. The research, the evacuation, why they left, and how we can escape." A distant explosion shook the chamber, sending small cascades of dust and crystal fragments raining down from the ceiling. The Syndicate forces had breached the outpost's upper levels. "Assessment complete," 7 Malawian Quatches announced. "Compatibility confirmed. Access granted to emergency protocols." Kale slowly withdrew his hands from the pool, though the luminescent patterns continued to flow across his skin. "We need to go now," he said with unnerving certainty. "They're coming, and they can't be allowed to find this place." The boy is correct, 7 Malawian Quatches confirmed. Syndicate protocols are well documented in core memory. They will extract and weaponize the Nexus technology without comprehending its true nature. "Then let's move," Riven urged, helping Kale to his feet. The boy seemed unsteady, as if adjusting to some internal change. "Which way to these emergency vessels?" 7 Malawian Quatches indicated a previously invisible passage that had opened in the far wall of the chamber. "I will guide you. The core has activated the launch sequence, but manual navigation will be required." As they hurried toward the passage, Celia cast a concerned glance at her son. "What happened back there, Kale? What did it show you?" The boy's eyes still held traces of luminescence, slowly fading back to their natural blue. "Everything, Mom. It showed me everything. The core was created by people who came before, way before. Syndicate found it and tried to copy it, but they never understood it was alive." He looked up at Riven. "It knows about you too. It says you have a part in this." "Me?" Riven scoffed, uncomfortable with the idea of some ancient technology having opinions about him. "I'm just a contractor trying to get us out of here in one piece." "You are more," 7 Malawian Quatches interjected as they navigated the narrow passage. "Your genetic signature was recognized by the core. There is resonance." "What the hell does that mean?" Riven demanded. "It means," Celia said slowly, studying his face with new understanding, "that the reason Kale has such strong abilities might not be entirely due to what Syndicate did to me. You must carry some compatible genetic markers yourself, dormant, perhaps, but present." Riven wanted to dismiss the idea outright, but flashes of memory stopped him. Strange incidents throughout his life when technology had responded oddly to his touch, systems that worked for him when they failed for others. Coincidences he'd always written off, but now. Another explosion, closer this time, cut short his contemplation. The passage shook violently, forcing them to brace against the walls. "They've deployed mining charges," 7 Malawian Quatches observed. "Highly inefficient and dangerous in this environment." "Syndicate isn't known for subtlety," Celia remarked grimly. "How much farther?" "We have arrived," the robot announced as the passage widened into a small, circular chamber. Set into opposite walls were 2 sleek vessels, clearly designed for rapid evacuation rather than comfort. Each bore the faded insignia of the original research team, a stylized star with a spiral pattern at its center. "These ships are ancient," Riven observed, running a hand along the nearest hull. To his surprise, the metal felt warm, responsive, systems already humming to life beneath his touch. "Age is irrelevant," 7 Malawian Quatches stated. "They incorporate core technology. Their capabilities exceed current Syndicate vessel specifications by approximately 43.7%. That got Riven's attention. "You mean they're faster?" "And more adaptable," 7 Malawian Quatches confirmed. "They will respond to neural guidance, particularly from those with interface compatibility." Celia was already examining the nearest ship's entry hatch. "There's no conventional control system, just neural interface pads." 7 Malawian Quatches moved to a central console that had illuminated at their arrival. The core has prepared launch trajectories to 18 possible safe destinations. Selection must be made prior to departure. Another explosion rocked the chamber, this one powerful enough to crack the ceiling. Debris rained down, forcing them to duck for cover. "They're getting close," Riven warned. "We need to make a decision now." Kale suddenly stepped forward, placing his hand on the console beside 7 Malawian kwaches. His markings flared briefly as he connected with the system. "There's a place," he said, his voice distant again. "The core calls it Sky-Spine. It's hidden from Syndicate scanning systems." Sky-Spine confirmed, 7 Malawian kwaches stated. "Remote outpost established during initial core research, abandoned but functional. Distance, 4.7 light jumps. Estimated arrival, 6.3 hours with neural guidance." "Sounds like our best option," Riven decided, moving toward the nearest vessel. "Wait," Celia said suddenly. 7 Malawian kwaches. "What will happen to the core when Syndicate reaches it?" The robot's optical sensors dimmed slightly. "The core has initiated purge protocols. Upon your successful launch, all evidence of its existence will be eliminated." "You mean it's going to destroy itself?" Riven asked, surprised by a sudden pang of concern for the strange entity. "Not destruction," 7 Malawian kwaches corrected. "Transformation. The core essence will transfer to a dormant state, undetectable by current technology." "Will it survive?" Kale asked, genuine worry in his young voice. MK7's head tilted in that oddly human way again. "Survival parameters differ for the core. It exists simultaneously across multiple planes. What remains here is but one facet of its existence." A violent tremor shook the entire chamber, causing a large section of the ceiling to collapse mere meters from where they stood. "Launch sequence initiated," 7 Malawian kwaches announced, moving toward the second vessel. "I will accompany you to facilitate neural interface calibration during transit." "You're coming with us?" Riven asked, surprised. This unit's purpose is to serve as intermediary between core technology and human operators. With the core transferring, my function transfers as well. The robot gestured toward the open hatch of the nearest vessel. "Please embark immediately. Structural integrity of this chamber will fail in approximately 3.2 minutes. They needed no further urging. Celia and Kale quickly boarded the vessel, with Riven following close behind. 7 Malawian kwaches sealed the hatch behind them, then moved to what appeared to be a simple circular pad at the center of the small cabin. The interior was surprisingly spacious given the vessel's external dimensions, with 4 acceleration couches arranged around the central pad. Each couch featured what looked like neural interface points where a pilot's head would rest. "Neural calibration required," 7 Malawian kwaches stated. "Primary pilot designation recommended for highest compatibility individual." Kale immediately moved toward the forward couch, but Celia caught his arm. "Not you," she said firmly. "You're too young to handle the strain of full neural navigation." "The child actually shows highest compatibility metrics," 7 Malawian kwaches observed, "but the core suggests divided interface responsibility for optimal function." The robot turned to Riven. "You will provide primary navigation. The boy will manage power distribution and stealth functions. Celia will monitor defensive systems." Riven stared at the neural interface with apprehension. "I've never piloted anything like this." "No current human has," 7 Malawian kwaches replied simply. "The interface will guide you." Another violent explosion rocked the chamber, this one close enough that they could hear the hiss of atmosphere beginning to vent through new fissures in the walls. "No time for debate," Celia said, strapping herself into one of the couches. "Kale, take the secondary position. Riven, you need to initiate launch now." Swallowing his doubts, Riven settled into the primary couch, placing his head against the neural contacts. Immediately, a warm sensation flowed through his skull, followed by a cascade of information that somehow bypassed his eyes entirely, appearing directly in his mind as intuitive controls. "Neural connection established," 7 Malawian kwaches confirmed. "Launch sequence engaged." The vessel hummed to life around them, pulsing with the same luminescent energy they had seen in the core pool. Through the small viewports, they could see the chamber walls parting to reveal a launch tunnel extending upward through the asteroid. Syndicate forces detected in adjacent corridor, 7 Malawian Quatches warned. Imminent breach. Hold on, Riven called out, though the warning was unnecessary as the acceleration couches automatically secured their occupants with form-fitting restraints. Following the guidance flowing through his mind, Riven triggered the launch sequence. The vessel shot forward with breathtaking acceleration, racing through the narrow tunnel as explosions erupted behind them. Through the neural link, Riven could sense the asteroid shuddering around them as the core initiated its purge protocols. They burst from the asteroid's surface like a bullet from a gun, accelerating hard enough that the stars visible through the viewports stretched into lines of light. Behind them, the asteroid's surface began to ripple with waves of energy, then collapsed inward upon itself in a silent implosion. Core transition complete, 7 Malawian Quatches announced. Pursuit detection systems active. Riven's mind was flooded with navigational data, star maps, gravitational fields, radiation belts, all somehow instantly comprehensible through the neural interface. He felt Kale's presence in the system as well, the boy's natural affinity for the technology creating a harmonious balance to Riven's more instinctive approach. Syndicate vessels detected, Celia reported, her voice tight with concentration as she monitored the defensive systems. 3 pursuit craft launching from the primary ship. I see them, Riven confirmed, the information flowing directly into his consciousness. Through the interface, he could sense optimal evasion trajectories, calculated in real time based on the pursuing vessel's capabilities. With a thought, he sent their vessel into a spiraling dive between 2 massive asteroids, using their gravitational fields to accelerate further. The maneuver would have been impossible with conventional controls, requiring split-second adjustments that only the neural interface could facilitate. They're still following, Celia warned. Weapons systems charging. Preparing jump sequence, 7 Malawian Quatches stated. Skyspine coordinates locked. Jump integrity at 87% and rising. Kale's eyes were closed in concentration, his small hands gripping the neural contacts of his couch. The luminescent patterns on his skin pulsed in rhythm with the vessel's systems. I can hide us, he said, his voice distant. Just like I did with the drone. Before either adult could respond, Kale channeled his ability through the ship's systems. The lights dimmed momentarily, then stabilized as a wave of energy rippled outward from their vessel. On the sensor displays, their signature seemed to fracture into dozens of identical echoes, each racing off in different directions. Phantom duplicates, 7 Malawian Quatches explained, something like approval in its mechanical voice. Most effective. The pursuing syndicate vessels hesitated, their formation breaking as they attempted to track the suddenly multiplied targets. Jump integrity at 96%, 7 Malawian Quatches reported. Sufficient for safe transition. Jump window opening in 5, 4. A warning flashed through Riven's neural connection. One of the syndicate ships had fired a concentrated energy beam slicing through space toward their position. 3, 2. Brace for impact, Celia shouted, diverting power to the vessel's shields. 1. Jump. The universe seemed to fold around them, light compressing to a single point before exploding outward in a kaleidoscope of color. Riven felt a momentary sensation of being everywhere and nowhere simultaneously as the vessel translated through fold space. The neural interface flooding his mind with sensations no human was ever designed to process. Then, abruptly, they were elsewhere. Stars arranged in unfamiliar patterns filled the viewports. A massive ringed gas giant dominated the local space, its swirling clouds a tapestry of amber and gold. Orbiting the giant was a smaller, rocky world with a single enormous mountain that reached so high it seemed to pierce the planet's thin atmosphere, the sky spine. Transition complete, 7 Malawian Quatches announced. Pursuit signatures not detected. Estimated safe arrival window, 94.7%. Riven released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, the neural interface gradually disengaging as the vessel shifted to automated approach protocols. The restraints on his acceleration couch retracted, allowing him to sit up and look around. Celia was already moving to check on Kale, who had slumped in his seat, clearly exhausted from the energy expenditure required for his phantom duplication trick. "Is he all right?" Riven asked, genuine concern tightening his chest. "Just tired," Celia confirmed, gently stroking her son's hair. He pushed himself too hard with that cloaking maneuver. Kale's eyes fluttered open, a weak smile forming on his small face. "Did we make it, Battle Uncle?" Despite everything, Riven found himself returning the smile. "Yeah, kid. We made it, thanks to your quick thinking." The child's compatibility with core technology exceeds all recorded parameters, 7 Malawian Quatches observed, its optical sensors focused on Kale with what almost seemed like concern. However, physical limitations remain a constraint. Careful modulation of ability usage is advised. In other words, Riven translated, "Take it easy on the space magic for a while, kid." Kale nodded drowsily, leaning against his mother's shoulder. "Can we go see the big mountain?" "Soon," Celia promised, helping him to a more comfortable position as the vessel continued its automated approach to the Sky Spine planet. "First we need to rest and make sure it's safe." Riven moved to the viewport, studying the approaching world with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "What exactly is this place? You said it was an outpost." Sky Spine was established as a secondary research facility during early core investigations, 7 Malawian Quatches explained, joining him at the viewport. When a decision was made to focus on the asteroid location, this facility was placed in standby mode. According to core records, no human presence has been detected here for 76 years. "So, it's abandoned but functional," Riven summarized. "Sounds perfect for laying low while we figure out our next move." The facility is extensively self-sufficient, 7 Malawian Quatches confirmed. It maintains automated gardens, water reclamation, and power generation systems. The mountain itself serves as a natural signal dampener, making detection from orbit highly improbable. "A hideout with a view," Riven mused, watching as the impressive mountain grew larger in the viewport. The peak indeed extended beyond the breathable atmosphere, its summit gleaming with what appeared to be some kind of crystalline formation similar to what they had seen in the core chamber. As they approached, an opening appeared in the mountainside, a hangar bay carved directly into the rock, illuminating with guidance lights as their vessel neared. Automated reception protocols initiating, 7 Malawian Quatches noted as their ship was gently guided into the mountain's interior. Welcome systems activating after extended dormancy. The vessel settled onto a landing pad within a spacious hangar, much larger than the one they had left behind in the asteroid. Several other vessels of varying designs were docked in neighboring berths, all bearing the same spiral star insignia. "Looks like the original research team left in a hurry," Riven observed, nodding toward the abandoned ships. "Protocol dictated centralized evacuation," 7 Malawian Quatches explained. All personnel were recalled to primary research site before final withdrawal. The vessel's hatch opened with a soft hiss, revealing a pressurized dock that appeared remarkably well-maintained despite decades of abandonment. Soft lighting activated along the floor and walls as they exited, creating a path deeper into the mountain. "Atmospheric conditions optimal," 7 Malawian Quatches announced after a brief scan. "No contaminants detected. All primary systems functional." Kale had recovered enough to walk on his own, though he stayed close to Celia's side, his eyes wide as he took in their new surroundings. "It feels friendly," he said simply. "The facility incorporates aspects of core technology," 7 Malawian Quatches explained. "It responds to compatible neural patterns. Your presence is being welcomed." Riven remained cautious, his hand never straying far from his blaster as they followed the illuminated path through a series of corridors and chambers. Unlike the cramped confines of the asteroid outpost, Sky Spine facility was spacious and almost organic in design, with curved walls and ceilings that somehow managed to feel both ancient and futuristic simultaneously. Eventually, they emerged into what appeared to be a central atrium, a vast open space within a mountain, stretching upward for hundreds of meters. At its center stood a towering structure reminiscent of the mountain itself, surrounded by a series of terrace platforms connected by graceful bridges. Soft bioluminescent lighting permeated everything, creating an atmosphere that was somehow both energizing and calming. Primary operations hub, 7 Malawian kwaches indicated, gesturing toward the central structure. Living quarters located on peripheral terraces. Hydroponics and life support systems occupy lower levels. It's beautiful, Celia breathed, her scientific mind clearly appreciating the elegant integration of form and function. Kale had already moved to the edge of the platform they stood on, looking down at what appeared to be gardens below. Actual growing plants in neat beds, tended by small maintenance robots that moved between rows with careful precision. "Mom, look," he called excitedly. "There's food growing." Automated agriculture has been maintained at minimal levels throughout standby period, 7 Malawian kwaches confirmed. Current production sufficient for 3 human occupants with 27% surplus. Riven found himself relaxing slightly for the first time since their chaotic reunion on Talos 4. "So we're safe here? At least for now." Skyspine's location was compartmentalized even within the original research team, 7 Malawian kwaches stated. Only those with direct core interaction were provided coordinates. Syndicate records, according to core analysis, contain no reference to this facility. "But they'll keep looking for us," Celia said quietly, joining her son at the railing. "Especially now that they know what Kale can do." "Let them look," Riven found himself saying with unexpected conviction. "We've got the home field advantage now. And time to figure out our next move." 7 Malawian kwaches turned to face them fully, its optical sensors shifting to a warmer hue. The core provided specific directives before transition. "This facility is to serve as sanctuary not merely for yourselves, but potentially for others like you, those bearing compatible neural markers who may be exploited by entities like Syndicate." Kale looked up, his eyes brightening with excitement. "You mean there are more people like us?" "Genetic analysis indicates probable distributed occurrence throughout human populations," 7 Malawian kwaches confirmed. "Most remain dormant without proper activation stimulus." "A sanctuary," Celia repeated, her voice contemplative. "A place where people like Kale could be safe, could learn to control their abilities without being weaponized." Riven wasn't entirely comfortable with the sudden expansion of what he'd assumed would be a temporary hiding place into some kind of refuge for genetic outliers. But watching Kale's excitement and Celia's renewed sense of purpose, he found it difficult to voice objections. "We should rest first," he suggested instead. "It's been a hell of a day. Tomorrow we can talk about turning this place into an interstellar hotel for tech psychics." 7 Malawian kwaches directed them to a residential terrace where comfortable quarters awaited. Despite decades of disuse, the rooms were clean and welcoming, another testament to the facility's remarkable self-maintenance capabilities. Food synthesizers provided a simple but nutritious meal, and diagnostic beds assessed their physical condition, treating Riven's minor injuries from their escape with targeted regeneration fields. Later, after Kale had finally succumbed to exhaustion and fallen asleep in a room adjacent to Celia's, Riven found himself standing on a small balcony overlooking the atrium. The vast space was peaceful at night cycle, the bioluminescent lighting dimmed to a gentle glow that mimicked starlight. He sensed rather than heard Celia join him, her presence somehow registering on a level he couldn't quite explain, perhaps an after-effect of the neural interface from their escape. "He's finally asleep," she said softly, coming to stand beside him at the railing. "It usually takes hours to get him to settle down, but today's adventures wore him out completely." "He's a remarkable kid," Riven admitted. "Brave, quick thinking. He gets that from his father," Celia replied, giving him a sidelong glance. Riven tensed slightly, the question he'd been avoiding since their reunion finally unavoidable. "Are you certain? About me being his father?" Celia finished when he trailed off. Yes, there hasn't been anyone else, Riven. Not since that night after you pulled me from a fire. The memories surfaced with unexpected clarity, the aftermath of the rescue, both of them running on adrenaline and relief in a dingy, safe house while waiting for extraction. One night of connection before his orders changed, and he was recalled, leaving her to fend for herself. I didn't know, he said quietly. I would have. What? She interrupted gently. Come back for us? Thrown away your career with Syndicate? Become a family man? She shook her head. We both know that's not who you were then. And now? The question surprised even him as it left his lips. Celia was silent for a long moment, studying his face in the soft glow of the atrium lights. Now, I don't know. People change. Circumstances change them. She gestured around at the vast space surrounding them. All of this has changed us, whether we wanted it to or not. Riven couldn't argue with that. Just 24 hours ago, he had been a solo contractor focused on his final job before retirement. Now he was, what? A fugitive? A father? Guardian of some ancient technological sanctuary? I'm not asking for commitments, Celia continued when he didn't respond. But Kale deserves to know his father, and you deserve to know your son. I'm not exactly father material, Riven muttered, echoing concerns that had been swirling through his mind since that first moment on Talos 4. Neither of us had a manual for any of this, Celia replied with a short laugh. I've been making it up as I go since the day he was born. Sometimes that's all parenting is. Below them, one of the small agricultural robots trundled along a garden path, its gentle humming barely audible in the quiet night. The peaceful scene stood in stark contrast to the chaos and danger they had narrowly escaped. Do you think this place could really be what 7 Malawian Quatches described? Riven asked, changing the subject slightly. A sanctuary for people like Kale? I think it has potential, Celia answered thoughtfully. The technology here is remarkable, integrated with nature in ways I've never seen before. It feels right somehow, balanced in a way Syndicate's approach never was. And you believe there are others out there? Other kids with abilities like Kale's? 7 Malawian Quatches seemed certain, and the Core's data would suggest it's possible. She turned to face him directly. Syndicate has been hunting for compatible subjects for years. Their program didn't start or end with me. There are others who've escaped, others who are still being pursued or experimented on. The thought of other children being subjected to Syndicate's methods stirred something protective in Riven that he hadn't known existed. Then maybe this sanctuary idea isn't so crazy after all. Celia's expression softened with surprise and what might have been hope. You consider staying? Helping with this? I'm not making any long-term promises, Riven cautioned, unwilling to commit to more than he could deliver. But for now, yes, I'll stay. Help get this place operational as a proper hideout. At minimum, I owe you and Kale that much. It's a start, Celia acknowledged, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. And more than I expected when I track you down on Talos 4. Speaking of which, Riven said, curiosity finally getting the better of him. How did you find me? My assignment was classified. Let's just say Kale isn't the only one with special abilities, Celia replied enigmatically. Mine are more subtle, but equally useful when it comes to accessing systems I shouldn't be able to reach. Riven shook his head with grudging admiration. Remind me never to underestimate either of you. I think you're learning that lesson already, she said, her smile widening slightly. She turned to go, pausing at the doorway back into the living quarters. Get some rest, Riven. Tomorrow we start planning for a future none of us could have imagined yesterday. Left alone on the balcony, Riven returned his gaze to the peaceful atrium below. For years, he had worked solely for himself, taking jobs that paid well and required minimal attachment. The thought of being responsible for others, a son, a sanctuary, a future, should have terrified him. Yet as he stood there in the gentle glow of Skyspine's inner heart, watching the quiet, persistent life that had continued here for decades without human presence, he felt something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Not peace, exactly. He was too practical to believe their troubles with Syndicate were over, but perhaps something like purpose. Whatever came next, he would face it not as the solitary contractor he had been, but as part of something larger. Something, he had to admit, that felt strangely like family. In the room adjacent to Celia's, Cale slept peacefully for the first time in months. His dreams filled not with the usual nightmares of pursuit and fear, but with visions of the mountain that had welcomed them, of the core that had recognized him, and of the man who had once carried his mother through fire and had now returned to their lives. Deep within Skyspine's central tower, systems that had lain dormant for generations continued their gradual awakening, responding to the presence of compatible minds after decades of solitude. And somewhere in the data streams that flowed through the mountain's crystalline heart, a fragment of the core that had saved them pulsed with quiet satisfaction as the first step of a much larger plan unfolded exactly as it had foreseen. The sanctuary had found its guardians. Now it could begin its true purpose.